Welcome everybody. It's 8 a.m. Pacific time here. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank you all for arriving. And as part of our practice and what we bring to the world, we're going to start off with a really short, what we call portable practice. And then I'll begin the webinar. But what I'd invite you to do at this moment is to just get comfortable in your chair. Feel the surface that your body is sitting on. And I would invite you to close your eyes if that feels right for you. And what we're going to do is just do a short 3-breath practice. And so from here, maybe just go ahead and let all the air out of your lungs. And in this next deep, full breath in, just feel your body, feel the sensations of your body. And go ahead and just let go, exhale it all out. And in this second breath, just breathe in. Take notice of what your energy is like right now in this moment in time. And then a nice long exhale out. And in this third and final breath, as you breathe in, at the crest, the top of your breath, just think about what's most important to you right now, at this moment in time. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Alexi Dosa. I'm the head of growth and client enablement here at SIY Global, and today we've got 2 guests to speak with us and share their experiences around the SIY Global organizational teacher training program that we offer. And so today with us, we have Christine Wenger, and she is with Toyota Financial Services. She's the essentially enterprise change enablement co-founder and the co-founder of Mindfulness at Toyota. So her career began in technical consulting and software development, a place where I just left. Her career began around this technical orientation, which is beautiful. And she now enables the teams to prepare for change, organizational change, and thrive during change. So these are really important concepts that we all have to live through today. So we're really pleased to have Christine with us. She's got some extensive experience in change management and consulting, facilitation, and coaching. So thank you, Christine. It's a pleasure to have you. And then along with us today, we have Christoph Müller-Höcker, and he's the group mindfulness lead at Allianz. And we have to thank Christoph because he's up fairly late today in the afternoon for him. He's over in Europe. And so thank you, Christoph, for joining us. He started a grassroots movement around global mindfulness at Allianz, something that is starting to take hold more and more in the corporate community and the world at large. So we're all pleased to have that take place and have people like Christoph and Christine enabling this. So he's got almost 20 years in his professional life around working around topics of change and growth and working with people in an organizational way. And has also worked as a management consultant and was recently responsible for organizational development and change as the head of organizational change within his organization. So we're really pleased and blessed to have both of you. Yeah, let's go ahead and just get started here. So we have people coming in from all over different places in the world. I sit here in Mill Valley, California. In Northern California. Christoph is over in Europe. Christine, where might you be today? Where are you located today?
I'm just north of Dallas, Texas.
Okay, so it's Central Time Zone covered as well. So we've got people from all over the globe right now, and we're pleased to have you as well. If you have questions, I would invite you to consider using the Q&A panel within Zoom. We'll take some of those questions as we progress during this conversation. And what we're going to have is just a fun conversation. So I'm going to start off with Christine. do you mind sharing with us, what was your personal why for taking this path within your company, and what has this done for you? What kind of meaning has this created for you and the organization that you lead?
Yeah, no, thanks, Alexi, and welcome everyone. I'm excited to share some information today, and hopefully it helps each and every one of you. So it was about 13 years ago for me. So through some of the practices, I was focusing in on where I felt stress in my body, and I began to start to notice what's happening, kind of deepening that self-awareness. I started getting greater clarity on what was happening, and I developed this early warning system of when I was getting on the stress ledge, I call it, and potentially falling off the stress ledge. The stress ledge for me is I avoided back surgery over 13 years ago and have not had a significant issue since. And I found these tools that helped me tremendously that I could practice in, when I started 1 to 5 minutes a day, so really small. And I realized how lacking yet needed these mental fitness practices were within organizations, and watching some of my colleagues and peers. And that's what helped me to bring the concepts into Toyota about 3.5 years ago.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. So personal clarity is what you were able to receive from this, as well as some of the benefits of health and wellness. It sounds like through stress reduction and stress management. It's really important. It's always important in the times we live in, but the more we can develop these capacities, the greater our capacity to show up as our best selves. So thank you for that, Christine. Christoph, how about you? Do you mind sharing with us, what was your personal why? Why have you taken this path, brought these types of practices to the work environment?
Yeah, good morning, and maybe also good evening to people might join from Europe as well. So I'm aware because I met a person this afternoon who said, "Hey, Christoph, great, I will see you tonight." That's great that we also can connect online and meet people we didn't even know from. So my personal story or interest into the topic raised during work a few years ago, when in my change work, I kind of realized that people are overwhelmed and we do not really reach people. And there are so many demands coming along and further requests in terms of development, digitalization, self-organization, all the stuff. Like in Search Inside Yourself, there's a marvelous picture where many of us might identify with. You're sitting on your desk and sometimes thinking, oh my God, how can I cope with that, or how can I deal with that? And I was kind of searching for something which is accessible to anybody and is helping kind of doing it in a self-care mode on your own. And for sure, you can do it with others as well. And in that search, actually, I came over Search Inside Yourself. I still realize it. It was November 2018. Yeah, and when I went there, I was super impressed and so much inspired that I thought, well, if this is true, and then I read a lot and so on, yeah, to reconfirm, this is something we really need for our organization and our people. And I started to initiate a grassroots movement, which grew into now a service where I'm full-time with a small team, allowed to bring mindfulness practices, Search Inside Yourself, to the Allianz world.
Wow. So Christoph, the sense of overwhelm, I think we've all felt that. I know I have. I've felt overwhelmed at work at different points in my career, and being able to bring practices and strategies for yourself as well as other people is a pretty powerful experience, particularly how it impacts the individual and then teams and organizations. And I'd love to hear more from you, given that you're in this area of organizational change management and transformation. I would love to hear more about that. Can you share a little bit more about this personal experience and how this translates into the work environment, particularly around change and what you do today?
I think the overwhelm kind of roots also into the request and expectations you have towards yourself, and also the need for taking even more responsibility on an individual level. And that can increase enormous pressure. In addition, when change really shall evolve or grow in a sustainable way, change starts with oneself. Yeah. So it's by me, with me. Yeah. Through me. Yeah. And in this combination, I think it's vital, as also what already has been said, that the degree of self-awareness and then also possibilities of self-regulation, management, connecting with oneself and the environment are just crucial to navigate in a skillful and meaningful way, being with the change and also navigating and shaping it. So, and overwhelm starts if you don't have clarity, if you don't have access to yourself, and you are also not, let's say, aware of what is happening with yourself. Like this hamster wheel, you don't see it. You are reproducing it and you don't really see it. Yeah,
By me, with me, as the beginning point for the change and your experience in this area. This is resonating for me, and I imagine others that are listening as well. Thank you. Christine, I'd love to hear from you as well around this. And particularly, if you don't mind sharing with us that these types of initiatives that both you and Christoph are leading, generally speaking, take executive level support as well. So support from leadership around these types of initiatives. And both of you involved with being involved with change and transformation, they're very top of mind. The industry where I just came from, agile transformation, digital transformation, business transformation, those are the three big transformations that people talk about, and they involve change. They involve change, and this word transformation is a pretty powerful word, but not always well understood. Transformation at the individual level, transformation at the team level, transformation at the organizational level. So do you mind sharing with us around maybe a little context of the executive influence, the purview of what your executives and your organization have, how they've maybe benefited from this based on strategy and transformation?
Definitely. And I love Christoph's analogy of being on the hamster wheel, because I think that's what everybody, not only was I personally feeling that, but I watched many of our employees in that sense, especially when you're going through transformation. So the one thing, and the industries, many industries are really being disrupted, right, all across. And if the pandemic didn't teach us anything, it's that we are never ready for all of the changes or transformations that come our way. And it's a shared experience we've had all over this world. What we're looking for is, how do we have leaders that can lead through that change and uncertainty? We need people that are resilient, like a rubber band, right? How you can stretch but not break. And so those are the elements that, although, Christoph, we're going to talk more offline, because it's this element of bringing in, what do you need to be prepared for all of this change? And truthfully, transformation involves what I would call, it's not a clean, straight box. It's not, we know exactly where we're going. It's, we have an idea. It's like there's a cloud out here several years. We have a general idea where we're going, but we may not have the exact path as to what that is. And so it requires clarity at times. It requires creativity to get there, and definitely agility across an organization, which is much of what this was.
Mm.
So when you ask about executive sponsorship, that's the language that we changed. We talked about how do you meet business objectives. And much of my conversations with some of my earlier adopters was around, what are you hearing from your teams? What makes things hard? What makes things easy? And just listening, then it was, how could you put something together to help? And in a lot of cases, before we introduced the SIY program, we actually did small, almost like jump into department meetings and talk about some of the concepts of just reflection that helps to build resilience. So there were very small steps that were done to tie to helping their teams work better, that then opened the door for the SIY program.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, so the connection to the executives, what their needs were, the languaging around how it would be understood at various levels within the organization, great listening and actually hearing across different parts of the organization and what was important to them and what was needed. You've brought up, Christine, this aspect of resilience. I think I can't look at well, it's hard to look at my news feed today and not see something in there around resilience. We teach resilience in this program. We teach all these core qualities of emotional intelligence. So can you expand maybe a little bit more on how you go about the training component and in relationship to parts of emotional intelligence like resilience? Can you talk a little bit to the training aspect?
Yeah, and for us, we separated out some of these concepts to test. I call it experimenting, because what you have to recognize is in some organizations, some of these concepts might be more foreign, or there might be some bias built into certain words. For example, mindfulness. And although I started a mindfulness at Toyota program over 3 years ago, the SIY program was not brought in under that umbrella. It was a way that I found to bring them together, but used that as a way to experiment first before going into the business, and then would experiment with the business teams around, how do you develop change leaders, right? So how do you teach leaders to be ready for uncertainty? And along those ways, it was recognize how you are affected through change. If you become more self-aware as to what's happening, then how do you show up differently for your teams? And then how do you work into self-management? So there was different entry points. And I would say that in our early days, we've bucketed out into almost small experiments. And now we're running a couple of programs. I've got one next week and another early February that are full. And we've got over a couple hundred sitting on a wait list in just our early no marketing grassroots efforts.
So experiments, yeah. Christoph, I'm going to bring you back into the conversation too. And thank you, Christine. Christine brought up this concept around languaging and maybe how mindfulness might be received, and what, culturally in the corporate environment, often it may or may not be received like maybe you and I would receive it. She talked about experiments. So how about you within Allianz and in your cultural environment? How did you need to run experiments to bring practices that would be powerful in a business way, both for individuals, teams, and organizations? Did you have to run experiments? And then how was the language, or what kind of languaging did you need to use in order to make it feel inclusive for everybody?
So I would, in my language, transfer experiments into spaces where something can grow, where you can try out something, where it's allowed without the intervention from outside, that something like small seeds or experience can evolve. And if it's an experiment, then it's that we call it pilots, where you where you do something without the commitment of the organization that they need to follow on with that. And that gives a room where, of possibilities. And when then people have a good experience and it lands, or there's the resonance, let's say that, take that fancy term, then you can build on it. And wording is crucial, but also super hard, because just imagine we have more than 150,000 people in our company. It's all over the place, and so many different culture starting points, and also, let's say, necessities, that it's just impossible to win everybody with one wording if it's not completely connected to the business strategy and the strategy itself. And it also depends on the structure of the company. For example, some companies are centralized, and then you can quite easily swim on the flow of that global wording, and people can adopt. If you have a more country-based structure where you're decentralized, you need to kind of mingle with each country a little bit. So what we decided is that mindfulness is a term which is known, which is common, and has a huge, let's say, backwind. Even though there are still people thinking, are you crazy? Mindfulness is esoteric and so on. But we also did not want to have too much translation work. What are we doing there? Because that explaining everything can be quite tough. And we started not from the top, we started from, let's say, the ground. That means we had some backing of management, but we were open from the beginning to all. And therefore, maybe, as I heard with you, Christine, where you had right at the beginning leadership exposure so much and also working with them, we were working from, let's say, bottom up with some top-down backing. Yeah.
Yeah, Christoph, you're bringing up something that may resonate for other people in the audience around this aspect of kind of like the localized culture or norms that may be different for how these types of practices are received in the business environment. I will say from personal experience, I'm a teacher myself, is that we all know what it feels like. And so when we have the ability to create these pilots and enable people to try some of these practices and how they might be able to skillfully bring them into their work environment, they know what it feels like when it works. And the labeling isn't quite as important. The labeling might be important to have a common language to bring people together around an initiative. But the pilots, if I'm interpreting you correctly and Christine correctly, is that the pilots give people the opportunity to experience some of these practices in a business manner, in a business-like way, the business environment. And these experiences open up possibilities for people to develop skills and navigate maybe more skillfully because of that. Christine, I'd like to bring you back into the conversation and hear more, if you don't mind, around some of the executive support, or how did you go about getting executive support to develop this internal organizational teacher training program for SIY, for Search Inside Yourself. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of pieces. It probably took maybe 3 years. And in the sense of other work was done. So our experiments were being done. We were doing some mindfulness work. And a lot of that was very grassroots. So much like Christoph said, that's initially how we started with just one exec being aware and going, all right, try something, but no funding, or anything. And so we did start grassroots, and it was more through a lot of the listening and the strategies that we started to find ways to come together. I ended up, fast forward a few years, and a couple of executives had really learned about general mindfulness practices and seen the difference around teaching around change leadership. And a couple of them were nearing retirement in their last couple of years and had started asking me questions around, we seem to have these same repeated issues, right? It's the overwhelm. It's a lot of the coming in and out of COVID and the pandemic that everyone had this kind of shared burnout was a top word, quiet quitting. And so a couple of them started asking, what could we do different? And truthfully, I was, giving them a few small things, and they said, no, what would you do different? And I threw out this program that I had known about for years, but just hadn't found that correct open door, and threw it out there and gave them a little bit of almost education on it. And they said, go pilot. So that's very similar to what Christoph is talking about. There's a lot of similarities of starting grassroots in some areas, piquing a couple of people's interest. Do I have every executive? No, not at all. Have I tried some and they're not fully receptive? Absolutely. However, I keep going back, looking for how do we work towards that business objectives that is most important to them and positioning. But a lot of what keeps us going is the stories from individuals and sharing that. And by sharing that within different teams, it brings it to life. And so it doesn't take every executive, it doesn't take the whole company to be that. It's this groundswell that continues to awe me and inspire me day after day.
Yeah, it's kind of hard not to be inspired by somebody who sits in a sense of awe, right? And everybody is going to find their own path. But I think one thing I've learned in my career is that business executives do respond well to when they see that they will have a better opportunity to lead organizations more effectively. And in doing so, the outcome is, maybe achieving business goals or meeting needs in a more effective way or a different way than before. So every executive can resonate and relate with that. So in my experience around these practices and bringing these types of this type of training to organizations is to really focus on that. For me personally, it was about how can I help an executive understand that they'll have a better opportunity to lead their teams and their organizations to achieve these goals and needs, because people are now better able to skillfully navigate. Well, what does that mean? That means they're able to manage this state of being overwhelmed better. They're better able to manage their stress. And there's all kinds of studies that people can turn to and look to see the benefits of stress reduction and how that might show up both at a personal level and in the business environment. So a question I'm curious about to ask for both of you is employee engagement and employee retention are two of the most critical topics for C-level audiences today. You brought up earlier, Christine, quiet quitting, and just this aspect of the individual person in the global corporate environment and their level of engagement. I think it was Gallup that said that something like 76% of employees are disengaged right now, depending upon different parts of the world, like that was North America. But employee engagement and particularly employee retention is such an important topic right now. Can you, either you, Christine, or Christoph, maybe start us off with that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
I think I can say definitely important topics. we don't specifically from this program perspective focus in on that. That's not one of the benefits we emphasize. We know by talking to other organizations, as well as just even talking with HR, that these you could easily do causation. You could draw some, correlation here, but it isn't one. I am curious though. I'm waiting. We haven't gotten our results back. They come within the next handful of weeks. So I'm curious if we do notice a difference. And then what I look for is data in any of the comments that say what's helped attribute to that, right? And do they give any mention? But for us, we focus in heavy on building resilience, which then would ultimately connect to engagement and also creativity, right? Because we need innovative thinking as you're going through these transformations.
Yeah, I love the conversation and many things are going through my mind. So on engagement, we emphasize engagement in the sense that we look at the correlation of what is driving engagement on a global level in the company and how we relate to our employee engagement survey once a year. And the whole organization is quite curious and excited about keeping the numbers, improving the numbers, because we know how much employee engagement is driving also company success. And in our measurement, when we monitor the Search Inside Yourself training, we also build relation to the questions which are being used in the employee engagement index to show also to the business that not only we are talking about the relation, but we also see the relation in numbers, as our culture is quite number driven, and also managers were being trained about decades to look at numbers. So the conversation you just mentioned, Alexi, about, well, how do people feel, and that's good to then be more productive, needs to nail down in numbers at the end. So I think it's also still a little bit of a way to go to see all the area of emotional intelligence, which is crucial as a fundamental part also of, this like soft and hard skill discussion we always have, like empathy or whatever is a soft thing which we don't need. It's actually a hard skill. And this whole conversation, we are in the middle of it. So everything what we do, and listening to you, Christine, is also pioneering work, to be honest, still, yeah. And you need to be persistent, patient, creative, resilient on your own way, yeah, because it's it's pioneering work, just to bring that into perspective. And creative in the sense of, if you know your organization and if you listen to your organization, you will find your way where the energy is and go with the energy. Like Christine brought the example of if your organization needs creativity. So try to build the narrative and the linkage of why and how it would make sense to invest in SIY or similar practices to boost creativity if this is on the agenda. If the agenda is moving, be wise to move as well. So that's how the business goes. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Christoph. I'd like to ask you to maybe, if you could expand a little bit more on the importance of the metrics. You mentioned that the metrics, that you're a numbers and metrics driven culture within your organization, Allianz. Is there more that you can share around that, the metrics and the numbers orientation?
Yeah, I think that it starts with the logic, how people look to things. It's the logic of, what are my goals? How do I measure my goals? And is that where I'm investing contributing to the outcome? So that's first a way of thinking. Yeah. And then is, how can I help my people to contribute to those outcomes. And depending on the different business type within our organization, and in Toyota, you are much more an industrialization company than we are in the financial service industry. You might have a lot of KPIs seeing how the production is increasing or not. And on our side, all the managers get targets on their employee engagement index in terms of improving that. So it's of their major interest also to find appropriate solutions to either keep, improve, or overcome challenges they've been seeing. So it's also really important to understand to which dimensions and items we contribute in a meaningful manner. And since last year, we also took some of the items which are being in the survey also in our own assessment, because in Search Inside Yourself, we do a pre-assessment, we do a post-assessment, and after some months as well, to see how the numbers are progressing. And we're also sharing in LinkedIn some of the KPIs, and what we can proudly say is on all dimensions which are of importance, people have tremendous self-reported impact. Like they are able to balance their life, they are able to handle workload even more meaningful. All the things which made a difference in terms of calmness, ease, and productivity are being served. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, thank you for that, Christoph. So across all dimensions, you said improvement. I can't think of an executive that wouldn't see benefit by having a workforce that is seeing improvements across all these self-reported dimensions. And yeah, I'm curious to hear now, just a quick kind of segue into how do people access the program when a program is going to be taught? Some of our customers, they literally have wait lists of employees waiting to attend. So there's the demand for the program is quite robust. Christoph, could you share a little bit about how employees are able to access the program, and what does that look like?
So in Allianz, we are proud to have an internal trainer workforce, which has been qualified by the Search Inside Yourself teacher training. And we offer via the global standard training channels, like we use SuccessFactors, others have other tools, where people can book like they can book any training. And we offer on a monthly basis Search Inside Yourself training. We market via the internal community, and colleagues just sign up. Still, they have to pay for it, and the costs are going to the team cost center. So there is quite a trade-off in the discussion between, do I invest my training budget into, let's say, expert training or into personal development training? Which kind of discussion can I have with my do I want with my team leader? Yeah. So we are in a competition mode with any other development measure in the company. Just to so that's our reality. So it's not central sponsored. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but the teacher trainers, the trained teachers, excuse me, are teaching programs on a fairly consistent basis, and people just simply sign up. So
we trained over 1,000 people in 3 years. It's one of the most successful voluntary program we have in Allianz. We aim for managing. I hope I can tell that at the end of the year that we achieved 500 people. That's at least my personal goal. Let's see if we can make it. And that's we want to continue, and also the numbers show, the resonance of the people show. Let's see if all the components in the organization help, but I think we have a good backwind at the moment. Yeah?
That's fantastic. Thank you. Christine, how about you? How are people within your organization able to access the training? So you have internally trained teachers to teach your employees. How would an employee get access?
Yeah, so we're a little bit earlier on, and what we have tested so far is referral. And we found actually, so one, people need to opt into the program. But the first thing we did is we took the group that went through the pilot, about 50 people, and said, you have a week's runway to encourage a peer, your manager, someone on your team to sign up. And we'll give you the first option to encourage others to do that. We watched our classes almost entirely fill, just in the 2 we had scheduled for January and February on that alone. Then we posted just on our overall internal site, nothing broad, and took word of mouth and signups from there. I am one of those where we do have a wait list. If I didn't take anybody new, we might be able to get through them all this year, but probably not. Our goal is to offer at least one a quarter, perhaps one every other month based on demand. So we're not quite at the spot I love, of targeting teams or anything. It's completely word of mouth. I have targeted our mid-level to upper management because around leading through change and kind of uncertainty. So that's our target market, but it doesn't preclude somebody else from responding. So I do have a few pockets that are like, we'd like to send our whole groups through, and we're just opening those conversations now on that. But in general, it's referral. And so back to Christoph's measurement conversation, we're doing, much of what he talked about. One measurement we have added is a net promoter score. So very similar to how you do in others, but we've added that because it's familiar, right? For executives, for people to resonate with. And so looking to watch that trend over time.
Wow, great.
We have it as well. So I just can share that SIY in itself always gets a really great net promoter score. So it's a super well received solution. Yeah.
Wow. And the net promoter score is a fantastic way for executives to see value. They, by and large, most executives understand what NPS represents. There's a wait list, Christine. That's very curious to me, and yet you haven't really. That doesn't sound like you've actually targeted large groups. It's just, this is through the referrals, this is through the postings, this is just simply just internally created demand, and you have this wait list. I'll be curious to follow up with you at some point when you do decide to target groups and organizations, and how that might create even more momentum and inertia around how groups could potentially perform better or have better sense of well-being or resilience after being trained in the program. I'm curious to know, and I think others are too, is what were some of the unexpected benefits? Did you have any, or did you receive any unexpected benefits from the program that you could identify that would be worth bringing up?
I think there's challenges that work to overcome. Unexpected benefits, I would say it goes back to the individual stories. So it's the aha that you couldn't anticipate coming from a particular person. Or, I get calls on almost a weekly basis, every other, of someone going, I just need to tell you, this is what's different, or people are acting different with me, or they're listening to me, or, my wife doesn't know what happened to me, but she likes it, that type of thing. And so it's the stories that are the unexpected benefits. Those are also, they show up in your Net Promoter Score. They're harder to measure, so I use a lot of quotes and incorporate that when talking to others, because it's ways that you cannot anticipate, in at least in our experience. I continue to be like, wow, that's a whole different way that helped somebody. Hadn't heard that way yet.
Stories, they're powerful, right? The story of humanity.
Yeah.
Passed down.
For me, it's the abundance and range, yeah, of how people are being touched and how they integrate it into their lives. And then, like Christine shared, are showing up in a different manner. That and I would just frame it. I don't know if it's unexpected, but it's always surprising how deeply touched people are, and what what they are doing on their path of life, how much they come into agency. Yeah, they say things, Christoph, with that you changed my life. Yeah, I don't know. That's amazing. So I would frame amazing benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Which was really interesting, is I had one of my executives came back to me and he goes, Christine, after going through this program, and his mom had encountered some health issues and he'd been traveling to take care of her. And he goes, it absolutely has changed my conversation with her. And he goes, she and I have been talking about these concepts and these principles and saving some of them out. And like, that is one of the surprising benefits of how it changed a conversation between a mother and a son by coming out of what they experienced in a company.
Yeah, that's not something you measure, that's something you feel. Yeah,
very much.
We have questions from the audience, and we only have a few minutes left, so I want to try to get to a few before we have to say goodbye here. But so Christoph and Christine, so I'm going to ask you first, Christoph. Can you confirm if your companies are paying for people to get trained in the teacher training certification program? Can you describe maybe how the training of teachers within Allianz was funded? So really what the question is about is, how do you get your budget? And this is from Susanna Vidal.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It depends. So on the constellation, in the end, you always need a sponsor. It's either somebody who is convinced, or in my case, in the grassroots phase, I was the owner of the corporate function of organizational change, and I was able to fund it out of my own budget, for sure, with approval and so on, but I was able to pay it on my own, which was an easy to access strategy. Going forward, now where I'm now an internal service, I either need to be able to fund it within my overall pricing, or I find, again, cooperation partners within the organization who say, I want to invest into the mindfulness practice in my area. I want to scale it in France or in Switzerland or wherever. Can you help me to grow the practice? And then it's part of the solution and the package where business leaders invest and give money.
Yeah, and a business leader is going to invest because they believe they're going to get outcomes that will be beneficial to their organizations. How about you, Christine? How has budgeting been secured for your program?
So initially it was through one particular sponsor that did it. The positioning was a trade-off between some funds I had earmarked for something else, and said, what if we moved it to this? And it also was positioned around, I can take my costs down by teacher training internally. So in budget crunches, I can still continue the program because we are certified, but it takes us a good 6 months to a year before we're up and running. So even though we're doing this pilot, could we be doing teacher training at the same time to show that ultimately, yes, there's a upfront cost, but I can watch it go down by employing internal teachers.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
much like Christoph, after I've gotten through, because I'll have about, I think 3, I'll have 2 this year, including myself, and then 1 other. And we'll probably only be at that 3 to 4 until we run for a few years. But then that intent is, how do you find the right partners to expand, and where does it make sense?
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Leadership has been a theme of our conversation, and we've got a question from Annika Muller around, do you stratify the different groups of people by their title and role, like where they sit in the organization in terms of their leadership authority? And do you intentionally train leaders in different courses, or do you mix them in with other people? How do you go about that aspect of the training based on the person and their influence and authority?
Do you want first, Christine, or shall I? Or
Go ahead, Christoph.
yeah. So in our case, it's an open course. That means anybody can join, and we have from highest executive level, yeah, to just a normal employee, the full range, because that's also one of the beauties of the program, that we want to meet on eye level and also experience that we have a common ground. I guess we are humans, yeah. So that's also a very powerful and important element. What you do upfront in terms of, well, nudging, incentivizing, helping the different target groups, that's on a different way. But I would have it an inclusive and diverse environment, not to separate it. It's good to, if you have a central program for leaders, it's also super to integrate Search Inside Yourself into the standard catalog, because then it gets more legitimate. And that would be my thoughts on that. And also in the rollout, and when you use that, we were lucky to have also support and exchange with SAP, which a practice, they have also a long-lasting practice where you could exchange exactly questions like that. Because when you are in the phase of discovery, you need a partner, or you do it centrally with SIY Global. I highly can recommend to have a sparring, yeah, when you go onto that journey. Yeah,
yeah, peers and a network of partners is a phenomenal resource. We're actually over time, and I want to make sure that we close out here in a great way. But I can't imagine we wouldn't want to hear from you both again. So I'm looking forward to having more conversations with you and how we can support you. But I wanted to also share there are some key dates. So we're going to have an organizational teacher training opportunity. If you look in the chat, for those of you that are still attending, there's a link to where you can see the information about the SIY Global Organizational Teacher Training Program, the information about application. Session 1 starts March 27th through the 30th. Session 2 is June 5th through the 7th, and then session 3 is August 21st through the 24th. So all these sessions will be informational, and you can collect the kind of information you need. Also, feel free to reach out to me or anybody from the SIY Global team to help you with collecting information you might need in order to look at the budget conversation and how you might be able to make a business case internally to start a program, whether it's at the grassroots level, as Christoph had, or Christine, where there was more of an executive level influence in that manner. So we thank you both for taking your time. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I hope the audience learned a few great things about both of you and how your programs are operating today and how you're impacting the lives of people in the work environment, helping them to more skillfully navigate. And that's very personal to me. I'm so appreciative of the work you're doing. So thank you. With that, we'll bid you adieu. Thank you so much.